The Carver family moved into the old Victorian house on the outskirts of town, unaware of the dark history that lay buried within its walls. Robert Carver, the patriarch, was a stern but loving man. His wife, Laura, was a nurturing presence, and their children, Emily and Daniel, were the picture of youthful innocence. From the moment they stepped through the creaking front door, an unsettling feeling hung in the air. The house, with its towering turrets and labyrinthine corridors, seemed to breathe with a life of its own. Robert felt a strange pull towards the basement, a space the previous owners had warned them never to enter. Late one night, Robert heard faint whispers coming from the basement. Compelled by an unknown force, he descended the stairs. The air grew colder with each step, and the whispers grew louder, more insistent. In the dim light, he saw an ancient, ornate mirror. As he gazed into its depths, a shadowy figure stared back at him, its eyes burning with malevolent intent. From that night on, Robert was never the same. He became distant, his eyes darkened with an otherworldly gleam. Strange things began to happen around the house. Objects moved on their own, eerie sounds echoed through the halls, and a chilling presence seemed to linger in every room. Laura grew increasingly concerned for her husband. He would wake up in the middle of the night, speaking in a language she couldn't understand. His behavior grew erratic, and he began making strange demands, sacrifices of animals, ancient rituals performed in the dead of night. The children were terrified, sensing that their father was no longer the man they once knew. One night, Laura witnessed something horrifying. Robert stood in the living room, his body convulsing as if struggling against an unseen force. His eyes rolled back, and a guttural voice, not his own, erupted from his mouth. The entity had taken full control. The entity's demands grew more sinister. It required blood, suffering, and the essence of life itself. The family was plunged into a nightmare. Emily and Daniel were forced to participate in the gruesome rituals, their innocence shattered. Laura tried to seek help, but the house had become a prison, its doors locked by an invisible force. Neighbors heard the screams and strange noises but were too afraid to intervene. The once vibrant Carver family was now the subject of hushed whispers and fearful glances. Daniel, the youngest, was the first to fall victim to the entity's insatiable hunger. One night, during a particularly violent ritual, the entity demanded a sacrifice. Robert, or rather the being within him, turned on his own son. Laura's screams echoed through the house as she tried to protect her child, but it was too late. Daniel's lifeless body lay in the center of the ritual circle, his blood staining the floor. Desperate and grief-stricken, Laura sought help from a local priest, Father Donovan, known for his knowledge of the occult. Father Donovan listened to her harrowing tale and agreed to help, sensing the evil that had taken hold of the house. Armed with ancient texts and holy relics, Father Donovan entered the Carver home. The air was thick with malevolence, and the house seemed to pulse with dark energy. He performed exorcisms, but the entity was powerful, resisting all attempts to expel it. Father Donovan discovered the true nature of the entity. It was an ancient demon, bound to the mirror in the basement, waiting for a host to possess. Robert's accidental discovery had unleashed it upon the world once more. To banish it, they needed to perform a complex ritual involving the mirror, the blood of the innocent, and a sacrifice of great significance. Emily, now the only child left, was the demon's next target. The entity's demands grew increasingly violent, and Laura knew that they were running out of time. In a moment of clarity, Robert, fighting the entity's control, begged Laura to end his suffering and save their daughter. With a heavy heart, Laura made the ultimate sacrifice. In a final, desperate act of love, she performed the ritual, using her own life force to weaken the demon. Father Donovan shattered the mirror, and with a deafening roar, the demon was pulled back into the abyss. The house fell silent, the oppressive presence lifting at last. Emily, traumatized but alive, clung to Father Donovan as they left the cursed home behind. Laura and Robert's bodies were found in the basement, their faces etched with pain and love. Emily was placed in the care of relatives, far away from the town that held so many dark memories. Father Donovan continued his fight against the forces of darkness, but the Carver family tragedy weighed heavily on his soul. Years later, Emily returned to the house, now abandoned and overgrown. She placed flowers at the gate, whispering a prayer for her lost family. The wind carried her words, and for a brief moment she felt their presence, a comforting reminder that love can endure even the darkest of evils. The house still stands a silent sentinel to the horrors that unfolded within. Locals avoid it, sensing the residual darkness that lingers. Some say they can still hear whispers in the night, the echoes of a family's tragic end. And deep in the basement, where the shattered mirror once lay, a new mirror gleams, its surface rippling with dark promise, waiting for the next unsuspecting soul to release the evil within. Years had passed since the tragic events at the Carver house. Emily, now in her 20s, had tried to move on from her horrific past. She had found solace in studying the paranormal, driven by a need to understand. Emily started a YouTube channel, Haunting Truths, where she explored haunted locations and shared her experiences. Her followers grew, captivated by her bravery and the authenticity of her stories, yet she never spoke of. On the anniversary of her family's death, Emily decided to confront her past. She announced to her followers that she would return to her childhood home to document the lingering evil. Her audience was thrilled, unaware of the personal stakes involved. As she approached the house, memories flooded back: Daniel's laughter, her mother's gentle touch, and the monstrous transformation of her father. The house loomed ahead, as menacing as Emily set up her equipment, her heart pounding. She started filming, describing the house's history and her family's tragic fate. As night fell, the atmosphere grew heavy, and the familiar whispers began. She ventured into the basement, the place where it all began. The air was thick with malice, and her camera flickered. In the corner, she saw glint the new mirror. Her reflection twisted and distorted, a shadowy figure emerging behind her. Determined to uncover the truth, Emily studied the mirror. She found ancient symbols etched into its frame, similar to those Father Donovan had used. The mirror was a portal, a gateway for the demon. The whispers grew louder, and the temperature dropped. Emily felt a cold hand on her shoulder, and she spun around, but no one was there. Her breath quickened, and she knew she wasn't alone. Emily reached out to Father Donovan, now retired but still haunted by the Carver tragedy. He warned her of the dangers but agreed to help. They devised a plan to banish the demon for good, involving a powerful exorcism and the destruction of the mirror. Father Donovan arrived with holy relics and texts. They began the ritual, chanting prayers and invoking divine protection. The house shook, and the demon fought back, its rage palpable. As they neared the ritual's climax, the demon manifested, taking the form of Robert. It taunted Emily with her family's screams and accused her of abandoning them. She steeled herself, focusing on the incantations. The mirror cracked, and the demon's scream echoed through the house. Father Donovan pressed on, his voice unwavering. The air sizzled with energy, and the demon's form began to waver. The demon demanded a life, its fury unyielding. Father Donovan, recognizing the necessity, offered himself. Emily cried out, but he insisted. With a final prayer, he shattered the mirror, and the demon was pulled back into the abyss, taking Donovan with it. The house fell silent, the oppressive weight lifting. Emily, exhausted and grief-stricken, documented the final moments for her channel. Her viewers watched in awe, unaware of the true cost. Emily left the house for the last time, the shadows of her past finally laid to rest. She continued her YouTube channel, now dedicated to Father Donovan's memory and the fight against darkness. Years later, Emily stood before her audience, stronger and more determined. She shared her story, revealing the truth about her family's fate. and the ultimate sacrifice of Father Donovan. Her viewers were moved, their support unwavering. The Carver house, now abandoned and overgrown, stood as a testament to the resilience of the human spirit. Emily knew that evil still lurked in the world, but she was no longer afraid. She had faced the darkness and emerged victorious, ready to shine a light on the haunting truths that lay hidden in the shadows. Thank you for joining me on this journey through the Carver house. Remember, even in the darkest times, there is always hope. Stay tuned for more haunting truths, and remember, the light always conquers the shadows. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell to stay updated on our next adventure. Stay safe and stay curious.